We're on Lamed, the bottom of Lamed Zion on the base, and we're continuing with matzah, sugi of matzah, what you're yotze with and you're not yotze with. There's machloikus in Masechta Kedushin. What status does Maisa Sheni have? In other words, we know in the first year, the second year, the fourth year, the fifth year, you separate Maisa Sheni and you must bring it to Yerushalayim and eat it there. Is it your food or does it have Kedusha to it? We know it has it's certainly above Chulin, you can't eat a Betuma, and there's certain halachas regarding it, but certainly the question is, can you Mekadesh Nisha with it? Is it your money to Mekadesh Nisha with it, or is it only yours to eat? So that's the Gemara in Masechta Kedushin. The Machloikis is between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir says that Maisa Sheni is Mammon Gavoa. If you be Mekadesh Nisha with it, she would not be Mekudeshes. It's not your money to use. It's yours to eat. Like Suchalecha B'Sharecha. You can't eat it in your gates. You have to bring it to Yerushalayim, but it's not really yours. It's like entrusted to you to eat. Says Rabbi Meir, it's Mammon Gavoa. Says the Chacham, no, it's your money. And now we're going to have nafkaminas le'inyan matzah, le'inyan challah, le'inyan esrig, based upon this machloikus, whether it's yours or not. As we begin the Gemara now on Lamed Zayin, Amid Beis at the bottom, Omer of Asi. Isa shal Maisa Sheni. You have dough of Maisa Sheni, l'dir Reb Meir, Petur min achala. Look, the words of Reb Meir, since it says, Reishas Ariso Seichem, of your dough, it has to be your dough. This isn't your dough. Like Reb Meir, it belongs to Gavoa. It belongs to Hashem. Memela, you could use it, but it's not yours to go ahead and separate challah. It's not a riso seichem. It's not yours. Because it is yours. Matzah shel ma'aser sheni, the matzahs of ma'aser sheni, l'divrei Reb Meir, ein adam yotze b'nei chavasai. You will not be yotze yechir by Pesach. L'divrei chachamim yotze ben yedei chavasai Pesach. Now, we had this machlokes earlier between Rabbi Yossi Galili and Rabbi Akiva, whether we darshan lechem only like an aleph, and that you can't eat it ba'aninis. And the mela, since Maisa Sheni has to be eaten b'simcha, you can't go ahead and eat matzah, but for a different reason, a totally different reason, because it's lechem aninis. This is not that reasoning. In other words, Reb Meir says there's another reason you can't eat it. The reason you can't eat it is because what? It's not yours. It's not yours. It belongs to Gavoa. The Gemara's Niyaskin says, it says Arisosechem by Chala. It doesn't say Matzaschem. It doesn't say it's your matzah. But just again, very focused, important guys. We had a machlokes earlier between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Glili whether you can eat matzah of Maisa Sheni. And Rabbi Yossi Glili said you can't, because lechem only. It's called lechem of aninas. And since you can't Maisa Sheni has to be eaten b'simcha, you can't. Rabbi Akiva said no, lechem oni. As opposed to what? If it's nilish b'dvash or yayin or shemen. But again, this is this different nakuda, a different tam. Look at Rashi. Top Rashi. And even if he doesn't darshan like Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who darshan the ayin as an aleph with a vav as a ninos, you need yours. It has to be yours. So even if you don't have the time of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, you still couldn't eat it. Because why? Because it's yet yours. Well, come on, Parach, Miksiv Matzaschem. Does it say your matzahs like it says by Chala Risa Seichem? Okay, that'll be a question in the future. The Divrei Chachamim back in the Gemara, the Divrei Chachamim Yoytze Chavasei the Pesach, you will be able to use Maisa Sheni to be Yoytze Yechiev of matzah. Esrig Shal Maisa Sheni, an Esrig of Maisa Sheni, the Divrei Meir Ein Yoytze B'dei Chavasei B'yantif. Why? Because it says L'kachtem Lochem, right? Pre-Tzadar. So again, it has to be lachem, and this is not lachem. It belongs to the country of Meir. It belongs to the Gavaya. It belongs to a higher calling. So you have three nafkaminas between the machloikis Reb Meir and the Chachamim. Reb Meir holds Maisa Sheni as Mammon Gavoa. You would not be Yotzei Chala. You wouldn't have to separate Chala. You wouldn't be Yotzei Matzah, and you won't be Yotzei Esrei. The Chachamim, you'll be Chayiv in Chala, you'll be Yotzei Matzah, and you'll be Yotzei the mitzvah of the Tchilas Esrei. Now, Maskal Rav Papa, Bishlei Me'isa, very good by Chala, Tichsiv, Arisai Seichem, your dough, Mishalachem. I understand why Reb Meir would say it's not Chayiv in Chala, because it's Gavoa, it's not Lachem. Esrig Nami Tichsiv, v'lokachtem lochem, and it says on the first day, v'lokachtem b'yom rishon, lochem mishelachem yehei, that the esrog should be yours, and since it's Ma'aser Sheni is Mammon Gavoa Rabbeya, it's not yours. Ela matzah mikatziv matzaschem. Why would Rabbeya hold you can't be yaitz with matzah of Ma'aser Sheni? After all, it doesn't say your matzah. It doesn't say anyway yours. So since it doesn't have to be mine, I should be yaitza. Why not?
What happened to the Shei Mitzvah matzah? How come that's not a criteria here? Doesn't have to be made the Shei Mitzvah matzah?
I made it the Shei Mitzvah matzah. I baked the Shei Matzah's mitzvah. I had in mind. I baked it the Shei Matzah's mitzvah. You're not yaitza anyway. That's it.
Okay.
Amar Rava, v'yitem Rav Yemer bar Shalmaya, asya lechem lechem. We have a gezerah shava from matzah to challah. And just like challah, you need yours, so too, even though it doesn't say matzaschem, it's as if it said maschatzem, because you need the lechem to be yours, and like Reb Meir, Ma'aser Sheni is not yours. Ksiv hacha lechem oini, it says by matzah lechem oini. Ksiv hasam, it says by challah, v'hoyu ba'olchachem mi lechem haaretz. It'll be when you'll eat from the lechem of the land, right? Mala challah mishelachem, just like by challah, it has to be yours, and it says lechem haaretz. Afkan, so too by lechem oini mishelachem. It says it has to be yours. So very gishmak. So now we're all set, guys, right? We know esrig because why? It says lochem. We know challah, it says ariso sechem. And we know matzah, lechem to challah. And that's why Rabbi would hold, Ma'aser Sheni, you wouldn't be yaitza. That's Rav Asi's din. Lema Messiah lay, I'll bring a proof. Isa shel Ma'aser Sheni, ketura min challah. The Isa of Ma'aser Sheni is pata from challah. The Reb Meir, the Chacham Mayim Chayeves. Fred the Gemara, Lema Messiah. Let's bring a raya. Hainu hach, das idas. You're not bringing a raya. It's saying the exact same thing. It's saying that that you're not yoitza v'lo Reb Meir. You can't go ahead and use. You're not chayev in challah for Ma'aser Sheni. It says no hachi kamar. Lema, let us say mid the miflagi be'isa when they argue why challah. B'hanach nami pligi. They argue by esrig as well. That's one side. In other words, just like by challah, Reb Meir holds this moment gavoa, so too by esrig it's held this moment gavoa. By Dilma, no. Shiny hasam, it's different by challah. Dichsiv ariso sechem shei zimni. It says it twice, and therefore, since it says it twice, right? Therefore, what? I need it dafka to be mine, and my Ma'aser Sheni is not yours. But by esrig, it only says lochem. It only says it once. So I would say le'inya Ma'aser Sheni, it is yours. What does it mean that lochem al dashin lochem that I'm not yotze with an esrig that was borrowed? I'm not yotze with an esrig that was stolen. But einach hinami Ma'aser Sheni that I own, I would say yotze. So therefore, that's what Levi Messiah is telling me that it's no raya. That's why it's not a raya brewer, because maybe I would think esrig, you're not yaitza, kamash malon that you yaitza. Kamash malon, you're not yaitza like Rabbi Meir. Okay. Boy, Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Ma'u sheyatza adam yedei chayvasai bechala shel Ma'aser Sheni b'Yerushalayim. Okay, what happened? You brought your flour up to Yerushalayim. It had kedushas Ma'aser Sheni. You bring it into Yerushalayim, guys. The only way you can bring it out is if it gets tamei and you paid it. We had that yesterday. The only way to get it out if it's tamei and you paid it. You now go ahead, mix it up as dough. You go ahead and you separate challah and you give it to the kohen. Can the kohen go ahead now and be yotze with that dough with the mitzvah of matzah? Guys, you hear the case. Let's go through it again. We said yesterday, right? You have Ma'aser Sheni that became tamei. You could be poida, right? We said it yesterday, right? Ma'aser Sheni that became tamei. You could be poida, and you bring it out. So over here, there's an additional something. he went ahead and he threw another wrench into the grinder. He threw in challah. Now, challah alone, you would be yaitza. The Mishnah said, guys, a kohen is yaitza with truma and challah. We said in the Mishnah. Good. So if you had the challah alone, the kohen could use challah. You have the Maisa Sheni alone, right? So you could go ahead and Maisa Sheni, right? If it becomes Tameh, you could go ahead and be paid it. But if it becomes Tameh and it's Challah, you can't be paid it. You hear? In other words, the Challah impedes the heter of Maisa Sheni. The whole heter of Maisa Sheni is you can be paid it and take it and take it to anywhere you want. That's only provided it's only Maisa Sheni. But if it's Challah Maisa Sheni that's Tameh, the Challah part stops you from taking it. So that's the Shaila. Listen, Lamda Shalamda Shashayla. So boy mir Shim Melakish. Mao Shiyatza Adam Ylechavasai. Can a Kohen be Yatza? Bechala with his matnas kahuna called Chala, Shal Maisa Sheni of Maisa Sheni in Yerushalayim. Now, Aliba the Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Light Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that guy's Maisa Sheni, you can't be Yaitza because can't be eaten by Ninis, Light Tiboylach. Hashde Bechulin, regular Maisa Sheni, that's not Chala, Loy Nafik, you're not Yaitza. Why? Because Lechem Oni, like as if it's written with an Aleph and a Vav, and therefore regular Maisa Sheni, which has to be eaten with Simcha, you cannot go ahead and be Yaitza with Matzah. So certainly adding another wrench to the monkey wrench, right? Throwing challah, making it more problematic, you won't be yaitza. Right? There's no b'chalas miboy. Kiti l'miboylach. Who's the shayla? Who's Reish Lakish's shayla according to? I'll leave it to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva who darshaned lechem oni, and that you can't go ahead and knead it with shemen and the bash and yayin, but you could be yaitza with Maisa Sheni. Lloyd him, what's the din? Does the addition of challah make it worse or not? What's the shaila? The Rabbi Akiva b'chulin, who nafik? The metama, if the Maisa Sheni becomes tamei, yesh lem heta b'mayshavos. You have a heta to eat it outside. You can be paid it outside. Aval chala, but chala, the metamia, less lay heta b'mayshavos. There's no heta to eat it outside. Ulasrei for Oslo, you're gonna have to burn it. Loy nafik. You won't be yaitza. A dilma, or perhaps, guys, listen up. A dilma, or perhaps, amrinan hoyel v'ilu loikara la shem. If you hadn't called shem chala on this Maisa Sheni, ve'itma, and it became tamei, islay heted in my shavais. You have a heted in my shavais, v'nafik bay, and you'll be yaitza, hashtanami nafik. Now you also yaitza. We haven't just this concept of hoyel since, right? Hoyel since. It appears all the time. Hoyel, Pesach, you have a guest shows up on Yontif. Hoyel, you're cooking for this, you can add something else into the pot. The concept of hoyel. That's the hoyel. So what's the hoyel over here? Fellas, look at each one individually. Let's look at each one individually. If it was just challah alone, without Maisa Sheni, could the kohen eat it? Absolutely. The Mishnah said the kohen's yotzes chiyuv of matzah with truma or challah. If it was just Maisa Sheni, could you be yotzeh according to Rabbi Akiva? Sure. Why? Because it's shayach b'chol mosh v'seichem, it became tamei. So now, just because I add an additional heta by itself challah and throw it on the Maisa Sheni, you're going to tell me it's going to become tamei? Hoyel, since if he wouldn't have made it challah, it would have been permitted. Even when he makes it challah, it would be permitted. That's the hoyel over here. In other words, without the challah, Rabbi Akiva would say, go ahead, no problem. Now you say you put the challah on it, it's going to create an issa. The challah is the chalein is also a heta. So hoyel, since if I wouldn't have called it challah be muta, now even after I call it challah, it's muta. Or no, do we look at it as what it is? It's challah, You can't be poida it outside. It has to be burnt, and therefore you can't be yaitza with matzah. Those are the two stud on the shaila, according to Rabbi Akiva. It's got very lam shaila, very lam shaila. So let's see the Gemara. What does he say? Let's see one more time. Kiti boilach alibid Akiva bechulin hu denafik. By chulin meaning ma'isa sheni. That's not chala. Dimatama that it becomes tamei. Yeshlem had to be my shavais by being paida. Therefore, you can be yaitz the chiyuv of matzah. Abu chala dimatama lest they had to be my shavais. Ulasrei for us lo my nafik. Straightforward shaila. Chala burn goodbye. A dilma amin and hayel. Maybe we say since. V'ilu like kara la shein. Had you not called it chala v'tama and it became tamei, just tamei ma'isa sheni. Islay had to be my shavais by being paida. V'nafik and you could use it what for matzah. So hashtanami nothing. So now also I could use it even though what I call that's one side. Ikadi amri havade loiti boilach. That's not a shaila. The vade amin hoil. Vade in that case, guys, if you're using the flour of ma'isa sheni, you would go ahead and say hoil, and even though it's chala and tamei, and you have to burn it, you could be yaitza. You could be yaitza. Kiti boilach. When's the shaila? Chala halakuach bekesed ma'isa sheni. Hashem blessed you. You got a lot of crops. You don't want to schlep your wheat flour up to Yerushalayim. You take the flour, you take the kedusha of the ma'isa sheni on the wheat, on the flour, you put it into money. What do you have to do with that money? That money has kedushas ma'isa sheni. You have to bring it to Yerushalayim. And what do you do in Yerushalayim? You buy food, and that food now gets ma'isa sheni kedusha. Guys, listen up outside. Here's the idea. Ma'isa sheni directly has tremendous kedusha. This is ma'isa sheni once removed. It was ma'isa sheni. Guys, watch. It was cash. It's ma'isa sheni, right? Question: if that ma'isa sheni, the secondary one that you bought with coins that you had that you transmitted the kedusha, if now you're going ahead and it comes tamei, can you be paid it or not? And that's a machloikis to Rabban and Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbanon, you could be paida. According to Rabbanon, you could be paida. In other words, a secondary kedusha, even though it's a weaker kedusha, it's still strong enough that you can use money to be paida. According to Rabbi Yehuda, only the initial ma'isa sheni had enough kedusha for the to be typhus on the coin, to manifest in the coin. Once you were paida it a second, you took the money and bought a secondary ma'isa sheni, it doesn't have enough kedusha to be typhus in a coin, and therefore if it became tamei, you'd have to burn it. So now, the shaila is the following: if you went ahead, you took money, and you took the ma'isa sheni money, you took your ma'isa sheni, you put the kedusha on money, you went to Yerushalayim, you went ahead now and bought flour, so it's secondary ma'isa sheni, make challah. Do we say what? You got two oils over here. Watch, says the Gemara. Kiti boilach challah halakuach bekesed ma'isa sheni. Guys, so therefore what? You went to Yerushalayim, took money, bought flour, kneaded it, separated the challah, gave it to the kohen. Can that be used for a matzah? Now, v'aliba de rabbanon, like the rabbanon, like ti boilach, kiven the ami yipader. Since they said if that ma'isa sheni, the secondary one, became tamei, you could be paida. Hainu ma'isa, it's no different than the first ma'isa sheni. Kiti boilach, aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. The shal is going to Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar Yukaver, who says if the secondary ma'isa sheni becomes tamei, you can't be paida because it's too weak. The too weak to kedusha to work on a coin. That nine halakuach bekesef ma'isa sheni. Any food stuff that's bought with the kesef ma'isa sheni shenitma that became tamei. Yipadeh, you could be paida. So therefore, like this shita, there's no difference between initial ma'isa sheni guys and secondary ma'isa sheni. However, if Yehuda says you burn it, you have to bury it. You have to bury it. Miyam ninan hoyel. Do we say do we say the first one, guys? if you wouldn't have be paid it and you would have used it initially, it would be typhus the pidyon. Hoyle, if you would have bought the up to Yerushalayim instead of putting it in a coin, that's one hoyle. But hoyle v'loy karla shame, a second hoyle, if I wouldn't have gone ahead and called it chala, right? V'tama yesh leheta b'mayshavais v'nafik bay, so hafsanami nafik bay. Guys, two hoyles. One, had I not gone ahead and been paid it with coins and bought, but I view it as the initial Ma'aser Sheni. Second hoyle, had I not called it chala and it contracted tuma, I would be able to be paid it, right? Dilma chad hoyle amina and trei hoyle loy amina. Maybe you only said one hoyle and not two. That's the lamda shashayla. Maybe I only said the hoyle about chala, but I wouldn't say the hoyle that since if I would have gone ahead and not spent the money and I would have been able to be paid the initial one, so therefore the secondary also I'll say it. No, you don't say both. Loy amina. Amarava mistaba shem ma'aser chadhu. No taka mistaba the shem ma'aser chadhu, and therefore you be yaitza the chiyuv. You be yaitza. You could be yaitza. Last Rashi on the page. Mistabra shem ma'aser chadhu. V'chehechi the nafik b'ma'aser gufa. Just like you be yaitza with the initial ma'aser before you were paid there for cash. Nafka b'chalasai. You be nafka with the chala of that. Hoil v'shem chala loy nafik ba'alma. Since the shem chala doesn't take off the kedusha. Mechal matzah, because the kohen could be yaitza with matzah of chala. The nafik nami, and in addition, you would be yaitza b'chalas halakuach with chala that was bought. The hamikoyach ma'aser ba, because it comes with koyach ma'aser. We won't make the money the flour, but with money we'll come in the flour itself. So therefore, okay. So that was the Gemara. Okay, just to chazir, but quickly, what did we see? We saw the machloikas between Reb Meir and the Chachamim. The Indian, good guys, it comes up in Shas all the time. What kedusha does Ma'aser Sheni have? Look, Reb Meir, it has kedusha's gavaya. It belongs to Hashem. Therefore, three things: chala, esrig, and matzah. You won't be yaitza. Chala because it says arisa seichem. Esrig because it says lochem, and matzah because we have a gzerishava lechem. Like the Chachamim, you would be chayiv in chala. You would be yaitza in matzah, and you'd be yaitza in mitzvah of esrog. Secondary shaila, what's the halacha about being yaitza with chala of Ma'aser Sheni? Could the kohen go ahead and use that for his matzah? Absolutely. He could even use chala that was from dough that was purchased with money that had kedushas Ma'aser Sheni. That's the Gemara. See, you could have just showed up right now, guys. You know what everything was going on, right? Okay. The last din of the Mishnah was that the chalas of the toida, there's the three chalas of the toida, and the two chalas of the nazir. If you made it for them, for itself, you wouldn't be able to go ahead and use it for matzah. They're all not chametz, guys. There's only chalas and shtei lechem. Or if you go ahead and made it to be sold, then you could. So the Gemara goes into, where do you know this from? Where do you know that you can't use it? So we have machloikis amoraim between Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. Chalas toida rikiki nazir. You can't go ahead and be yaitzi yichi of matzah, despite the fact that they are matzah. They're matzah. So minani mili amar Rabba amar Kra. The pasuk says, "Ushmartem es hamatzos." You should watch the matzos. Ushmartem es hamatzos. Now, guys, when you're watching the rikiki nazir or the lachmei toida, are you watching it because it's matzah, or are you watching it because there's kedusha for a carbon? Both, right? Ushmatem es hamatzos. Matzah mishlesher l'shem matzah. Yatzazu, it would exclude the wafers of the nazir and the wafers of the lachmei toida. She'emish demeres l'shem matzah. You're not watching l'shem matzah. El l'shem zevach. You're watching it for the carbon. We're speaking about hesach hadas, guys, right? We had the whole sugi. Remember hesach hadas? Shmir on truma says shmir on kachim. Rabbi Yosef says amakra shivas yomim matzas tochelu. And what's the drasha? Matzah hanecheles the shivas yomim, matzah that could be eaten for 7 days. That you yotz l'chiyah. Yotz a beautiful limud. Yotz zezu. This would exclude the lachmei toida and the rikike nazir she'ein hanecheles the shivas yomim elo liyom v'layla. Now, these karbanis can only be eaten for a day and a night. The lechem has the same din. After that, it's considered night. So the mele, you can't be yoitza, says Rabbi Yosef with this. So we have machlokes. Light Rabba, the reason is why, because you're watching it l'shem, the carbon, rather than l'shem matzah. Light Rabbi Yosef, you need matzah that can be eaten for 7 days, and these can be eaten for 7 days. Tani Kabasi the Rabba, we have a brisa that's a right to Rabba. Tani Kabasi the Rabbi Yosef, and we have a brisa that's a right to Rabbi Yosef. Tani Kabasi the Rabba, Yachal, I might think Yotzi Yidei Chavasai. A person could be Yotzi Schiv, the Chalis Toida, or Kike Nazir. He could be Yotzi with the Chalis Toida and Kike Nazir. I might think so. Is Chiv a Matzah, Talmud Loimar, Ushmatem is a Matzahs, Matzah Mishnameres the Shem Matzah, only Matzah that's watched for the purpose of Matzah, Yotzazu would exclude Kike Nazir and Chalis Toida. Shein Mishnameres the Shem Matzah, L'Shem Zebach. Mamish exactly the same words that Rabbi said. Tanya Kavasi the Yosef 7 days. Yachli Yatsa Adam Yechabasa Bechalas Toida Rukike Nazir. Hamalema Shivas Yamim Matzas Tochelu. Matzah Nechelis the Shivas Yatzazu Shein Nechelis the Shiva. Elul Yamim. Yom V'Laila. Guys, good? Guys, good? Now, what do you go ahead and put in the Lachmei Toida and Rukike? What do you need it with, girls? Guys, what do you need it with? Shemen, right? You got a problem. Forget the. Why do I need a pasuk to go ahead and exclude it? Why not exclude the fact that lechem no, you got a lechem problem over here. You got to need it can't be rich. If you're going to knead it with oil, it's rich. So forget. Why do I need a pasuk of the 7 days or the pasuk of Adam Pesach Hadas? Right? Why don't you forget the pasukim? Even without the pasukim, in its base nature, it's not lechem honey. It's not poor man's bread because mixed in is oil. Fred the Gemara, v'tepikle milechem oini, misha nechal ba'aninis, yatzazeh sheinu nechal ba'aninis. Okay, big kasha. First kasha. Loit Rabbi Yossi Galili, right? Who holds that you cannot go ahead and eat matzah. Matzah has to be able to be eaten be'aninos. Good. That's why it's called lechem oni. You can't zevach, kike matzos, and lachmi toida have to eat b'simcha. Good. Ella b'simcha, and that what's the obvious answer? Sava l'krebe kiva. He doesn't have to drush of aninis, guys. He dashes lechem oni. He dashes what? That it shouldn't be kneaded with oil and shemen. That's the same thing. And yayin. In other words, that was a machlokes. How to dash an oni. Oni. So if like them on the oni, so why do I need the pasuk? L'chayra, you can't eat. You won't be able to eat them as matzah because they have to eat in b'simcha. And for the Gemara, this is according to Rabbi Kiva, who doesn't have that drasha. Therefore, you needed a pasuk. For the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva, this is dama ani. Typically, they have like matzah ashira. Like Rabbi Kiva lechem ani, it can't be kneaded with oil. So why in the world can you go ahead, and why do you need a pasuk to exclude it? It should be excluded by its essence. Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, revius it's a revius of shemen umischalekes he lekama chales, and it's going to be divided up among a bunch of chals. Rashi makes the cheshbon of how it's divided up. You take a half of oil and half a hin. You take a quarter for 2 of the things and a quarter for 1 of the things. Basically, it's such a minute amount, it's not going to be considered what? Matzah shira. Therefore, I needed a pasuk to exclude it from being yotze matzah. Furthermore, typically, why do I need a pasuk? But typically, in an echeles b'chol moishvos. Where do you have to eat lechem lachmei toida, guys? In Yerushalayim. Where do you have to eat mekike naza? Kachim kalam. Yerushalayim. What's the reason that you can't eat anything that you can't eat outside b'chol moishvos seichem? You can be yotze matzah, right? So why do I need a pasuk to go ahead and take lachmei toida and mekike naza either because of 7 days or because of Hesach Hadas, the fact that you can't eat it b'chol moishvos seichem. Reish Lakish leisemeres chalis toida rukiki naza necholim b'noy v'givon. Okay, a little history lesson, guys. Look it up. Look at the Zoom. Let's look at Uncle Rabbi Stern, guys. Listen. The whole time we were in the Midbar, any carbon was brought to the Mishkan. That was obvious. That the Mishkan was the central meeting place. Any carbon that had to be brought was brought there. Okay. when he got into Eretz Yisrael, there was 7 years of capturing the land and 7 years of dividing the land. During those 14 years, the Mishkan was in a place called Gilgal. During those 14 years, private bamas were permitted. After Gilgal, we brought the Mishkan to Shiloh, where it stood for 369 years, until the day the Aron was captured by the Pelishtim, and Eli broke his neck and he died. At that time, during that time, bamas were not permitted. However, after that time, for 44 years, there was the Mishkan of Nov and Givon. Right? Nov, of course, lasted until Shaul had it destroyed by Doeg Adomi, and then after that was in Givon. During those 44-year periods, there was no Aron there in those places. The Aron was in Kiryat Yearim, and then in Sion, David brought it down. And during that time, bamas were permitted. The question is, what bonus could you bring on a bama? That's a big machlokes. So there's an opinion that you could bring. One opinion says you couldn't bring on a bama. You cannot private bama. You cannot bring a nazir. You cannot bring what. You could you just couldn't bring it during that period. You couldn't bring a toid lachmei toida, and you could bring the zirus during that period. There's an opinion, obviously, that holds that you could. So also merits from here, when we needed a pasuk to exclude lachmei toda and Mekikir, because it's shaykh b'chol moshe v'seichem. Since bizman habamis, you could bring it, and that's not outside Yerushalayim. During Nov and Givon, Meilowan, I needed a pasuk to tell me you can't use this matzah because b'chol moshe v'seichem won't do the job. Since during the bamis, you see that you were able to go ahead and bring them, and that was b'chol moshe v'seichem at that time, because during the bamis it was considered b'chol moshe v'seichem. So Zosa Meres, there's a long Rashi that I just spoke out to you guys. That's the big Rashi in the bottom there. It's a nice historical Rashi. Zosa Meres, Chalos Toido or Kike Nazir, Necholim Benoiv Givon, they can be eaten mat in Nov and Givon. Good. Tanya, Omer Rebbe Loi, Sha'alti Es Rebbe Eliezer, Mao Shiyotza Odman Bechalos Toido or Kike Nazir. Obviously, he didn't hear our Mishnah. He's asking him, we know you can't. Or we know you could if it was made to sell, but not for yourself. Amali, so Eliezer told me, Lesh Shemati. Basi v'shalti l'fnei Rabbi Yeshua, Amali, Hari Amru Chales Toida, or Kike Nazir, Shasan La'atzmai, if you made them for the purpose of a Nazir, for the purpose of a carbon Toda, Ein Adam Yotzeb Ben Limchar, Ein Yotzeb Yotzeb Ben, stop. Limcha b'shuk, if you made it to sell in the marketplace, Yotzeb Ben. Kishabasi v'etzesi devar l'fnei Rabbi Eliezer, when I came and I told the Rabbi Loi says, when I came in front of Rabbi Eliezer and I told him the words of Rabbi Yeshua, Amali said, Bris, he said a lesson of Shvua, Hein advarim shnem v'lo Moshe Sinai. That is exactly what Allah Moshe Sinai. That there's no reason given, but there's a distinction between whether you made it for the carbon itself or you made it to sell. So if you made it for the carbon itself, you cannot use him. If you made it to sell, you could. Allah Moshe Sinai. Ikadi Amri, in another lashon, this is what Rebbe Eliezer responded. Bris, he made a shvua. Hein advarim shneimah Moshe Sinai, v'lo tama boy. Meaning, was this halacha Moshe Sinai that if you made it for itself, you can't use it for matzah, but if you made it to sell, you could? It's not halacha Moshe Sinai that we don't have a reason behind it. There must be a reason behind it. So in the first lashon, it was a statement. In the second lashon, it's a question. He's asking incredulously, like, what are you talking about? So the time of Mai, and Taka, what's the reason, the distinction between if you made it for itself or you made it for sale? So Amarabba, Kol Lishuk, right? Anything that was made for the marketplace, and Luchi Mimlach. He makes the following condition in Omar. Im is Davin, if it gets sold, Misdavin. And Eloi Misdavin, and if it's not sold, Efik Puhana. So if a Nazir needs it and it's sold, it's L'Shem Naziris. If a Toida needs it, L'Shem Toida, it's Naziris. And if not, then I'll be Yotzim Achiyav Matzah. Mashenkin, if he makes it himself for the Chiyav of Nazir, for himself, for the Chiyav of Toida, of course he won't be Yotzim. Hesh, that would be your Shaila Hesh. That who he made it for, right? When he made it conditionally. He made it l'shem matzah. If he needs it, l'shem matzah. Okay? In other words, when he made it with Tanai. If it's for Nazir, it's a Nazir. If a Toida buys it, Toida buy it. And if not, I'm going to use it for my matzahs. In the Shamash Aliyah, David.